So I wrote Stellarlune originally, like when I sat down and wrote the outline for it, I should say. I sat down saying, this is absolutely the second to last book in the series. We are wrapping these things up. This is what's going to happen in this book, and this is what's going to happen in the last book, and we're done. Um, and then I started writing it and realized that kind of the outline that I had made for it would have probably been like a 1,500 page book if I had included everything in it that I wanted to. And so I kind of realized, all right, I think we're going to have to restructure things a little bit. And then there was a very big piece of the story that the Keeper books are limited to Sophie's POV. So we're only in scenes if Sophie's there. And there's a character that's missing from Stellarlune for about 600 pages of Stellarlune and that is off doing things. And I had not a great plan for how that was going to work when that character gets back. It was just kind of going to be like, all right, we'll just sit down and have him catch everyone up on what he's been doing. And boy, did that not work. And so I thought, all right, I'll fix that in book 10. We'll go into that in book 10. And I finally had to realize that I needed to add this weird sort of 9.5 book to the series so that we could actually read what that character was doing in real time, so that we could really see it with our own eyes, so that way when I have those scenes where the character is just kind of quickly catching his friends up on what he's been doing, that it has the significance, that readers understand why it's so huge. And this new 9.5 book that is about to come out, it has some huge reveals in it, that readers might be surprised because he comes back in and he doesn't reveal these things yet, but that's because he's still keeping them secret. So 9.5 is told from a completely different character's POV. Now, I've done a 0.5 book in the past. I did 8.5, which was sort of half guide because I was realizing that we were so, like 5,000 pages into the series and readers might be having a little bit of trouble keeping track of certain things. So I wanted to give them a guide. But then there was also a piece of the story that I realized would tell better if I switched to dual POV, and we did every other chapter, Sophie and Keith. And so I realized that I've already broken the rules of the series and it went okay. And so I went back to my editor and said, I feel like we need to add a 9.5, and it won't be a guide and a novella this time. Like, it's a book, but it's a book told from Keith's POV. And we'll get to see, what he was doing. And I said, I really feel like readers are going to need that, because there's things that he did that are huge and vital and are going to come into play in book 10, and to just have it be that's just being introduced right there in a moment where he's like, yeah, so hey, this one thing happened, and like it wouldn't work. Readers need to see it and live it, so that when he does that quick catch up, like, everyone's having the right level of reaction. And so we go in 9.5, it is, just what he's doing. And it was a very fun challenge for me because he's in our world, he's in the human world, and he is, so it's not in the Lost Cities. It's a different vibe, it's a different feel, but it is very much a Keeper book filled with, things that relate right to the Keeper series. And it was just so much fun being in his head and kind of figuring out, like, okay, so what would he do if he came to our world? What would he, experience? What would be the things that he would have to try? How would he get around? How would he survive? And then, of course, working toward those reveals that also happen. And then, of course, we crash back. The end of the book is when he comes back in Stellarlune. And so then I would recommend that readers then, pick up Stellarlune and continue reading, just so that they're all caught up, so that when we get to book 10, which I am working on as fast as I can, I promise, it'll all feel, we'll all be on the same page, we'll all be ready. And I promise those reveals and everything, you can't skip 9.5. Like, you absolutely need to read 9.5 to properly understand book 10. It was just one of those things where this character, Keith, has become so vital to everything that's going on that we needed to be able to be in his head for a little while and actually really see what he was doing. And so that's how we got Unraveled. It's, you know, he's slowly unraveling. That's kind of where we got the title. He's running away from his world because he's really struggling, but he's also unraveling some mysteries while he's there. And so it was kind of a very fun and fitting moment when I realized that's the title of the book, because I actually used the word several times in the book in scenes, and it was just like, yeah, that's the title right there. And so then we'll of course come back into Sophie's POV in book 10, and you know, all of those reveals will then make a lot of sense and crash into huge things that are going to happen in book 10. Honestly, the real joy is like when I post things, like I just recently posted, we came up on the 12-year anniversary of Keeper on October 2nd. And so I did a post on my Instagram kind of acknowledging that. And it was crazy how many of the comments were from readers who found the books right around that time. And they're still reading it. They're now in college and they've kind of grown up with Sophie, and they're still reading the series and wanting to find those answers that I owe them, and they're still sticking with me. And then of course there were ones from readers who were like, I just found the books last year. I wasn't even born yet when these ones came out. And I think that's the really cool thing, is because yes, as I said in an early answer, I did sit down to write a younger book, you know, and versus a grown-up book. But at the same time, I have never actually thought of this story as a kid's book. I have never had to simplify anything. I have never had to take anything out or pull a punch or anything because, oh, it's a kid's book, I can't do that. It's just a book with a young hero as the main character, and it's just a book about kids. And so it's really fun to see that readers didn't have to do what I was forced to do. Like they didn't feel like they had to outgrow it. They didn't feel like they had to set it aside and say, nope, I'm not reading this anymore. I have to read these grown-up books now because I'm a grown-up. I love that they're still staying with it, because that really proves that I created the book that I wished I'd had when I was younger, because it would have been a series that I could have just kept reading instead of feeling like, well, I need to give this up. And so it's really, really cool to me to see that there are still new kids finding the series and discovering it and falling in love with it 12 years later. But it's also so cool to see that some of, I mean, I'm sure there are some that outgrew it, but that, you know, so many of those early readers are still sticking with it and are still here with me on this journey. I really try to focus on that, because I had naively thought that, you know, oh, it'll get easier by like book 8, it'll, you know, the world's built, the characters exist. This is like, you're on autopilot now, right? But no, because you're trying to top yourself. So every book I pull out all the stops, and then I get to the next one and I'm like, well, now I have to top all of that. And so, you know, it's definitely a labor of love. Writing these later books is daunting. But at the same time, just to know that I still have readers with me and that there are new readers coming to the series all the time, it's just like, this is so cool. And I owe them the ending that they deserve after going with me for thousands of pages. Like I owe them this. I have to get it right. And so, you know, pressure, lots of pressure, but you know, it's the most rewarding thing.